Welcome to your deep dive on the power of range. You've shared some fascinating excerpts from David Epstein's book, Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World.
Yeah.
So let's explore why breadth of experience might be more valuable than we think.
Yeah, it's certainly a thought-provoking idea, especially now when everyone's pressured to find their niche and specialize early on. Epstein really flips that script.
The book starts by painting a picture of how much the world has changed. What stood out to you in that section?
Well, Epstein dives into the Flynn effect, which shows how IQ scores have steadily risen over generations. It's not that we're inherently smarter, but the way we think has evolved. We're more adept at abstract reasoning, particularly scientific thinking, partly due to the complex, interconnected world we live in.
And he contrasts that with a study of remote Uzbek villagers in the 1930s.
Right.
They were incredibly skilled within their environment, but struggled with abstract concepts.
Exactly. They were masters of what Epstein calls kind learning environments. Think clear rules, repetitive patterns, immediate feedback. But when faced with wicked learning environments, those with unclear rules, delayed feedback, and constant change, they faltered. Our modern world is full of those wicked problems, demanding we connect disparate ideas and adapt quickly.
So having a range of experiences actually equips us to tackle those wicked problems more effectively.
That's the core idea. It's not just about accumulating knowledge, but developing the mental agility to apply it in unpredictable situations.
Which brings us to that fascinating section on the myth of the head start. We tend to think early specialization is the key to success. But Epstein challenges that with compelling examples.
He does. Think about Laszlo Polgar, who famously raised his daughters to be chess prodigies. That intense early focus led to remarkable success, with Judith becoming a grandmaster at just 15. But Epstein contrasts this with Roger Federer, whose parents encouraged him to sample various sports before focusing on tennis.
And that broader foundation might have contributed to Federer's incredible success.
It's a compelling argument. Sampling different activities can help individuals discover genuine interests and develop a wider range of skills before committing to a specific path. So instead of rushing to specialize, perhaps we should encourage exploration and a more gradual path to expertise.
I love how this challenges our assumptions about talent and success. We often focus on those exceptional cases, the Tiger Woods of the world, forgetting that there are many paths to mastery.
And even in fields where early specialization seems crucial, like classical music, Epstein highlights research showing that many successful musicians had early exposure to multiple instruments. Take Django Reinhardt, the legendary jazz guitarist who couldn't read music. He developed his unique style through an unconventional path, picking up different instruments and absorbing diverse musical influences.
It's fascinating how much we assume about the path to expertise. It seems like exploring different areas could lead to a later, stronger specialization, built on genuine interest and a well-rounded skill set.
That's a key takeaway. And this connects to how we learn best. Epstein argues that overscaffolding in education can hinder deep learning. He uses the example of an 8th grade math class where the teacher constantly gives away the answers. While students get good grades, they miss the opportunity to grapple with challenging problems and develop a deeper understanding.
It's like they're being robbed of that aha
Yeah.
moment, that feeling of satisfaction when you finally figure something out on your own. I cringed reading that section.
Right. It highlights how struggling productively is crucial for learning. Epstein points to research on the spacing effect, where we learn better when we space out study sessions rather than cramming. When we have to work a bit harder to retrieve information, it strengthens neural pathways and leads to deeper understanding.
It's like we're building mental muscle by embracing those challenges rather than avoiding them.
Exactly. And this connects to the next section you highlighted, grit and quitting. You shared your personal anecdote about becoming a successful runner despite initial struggles. While this demonstrates perseverance, it also raises the question, was your success solely due to grit? Or did finding the right training approach for you play a role?
That's a great point. Maybe it was a combination of both, but finding that right fit made all the difference.
And that's where Epstein introduces the idea that quitting can be a smart strategy. He argues that winners often quit quickly when they sense a mismatch and move on to better opportunities. He even cites Seth Godin's argument that winners quit fast and often when they detect a mismatch, allowing them to move on to better-suited opportunities.
That challenges the traditional notion of never give up, doesn't it? It seems like there's a difference between blindly pushing through every obstacle and recognizing when a path isn't working, having the courage to change course.
Precisely. Economist Stephen Levitt even conducted a study where participants flipped a coin to decide whether to make a major life change like switching jobs. Those who flipped heads and made the change were significantly happier 6 months later.
Wow, that's a compelling argument for taking a leap of faith, even if it means starting over. It suggests that sometimes our fear of change, even when a different path might lead to greater happiness, holds us back.
It certainly makes you think about the potential downsides of staying stuck.
This is all so fascinating. It feels like we're just scratching the surface of what it means to embrace range.
We are. And the next section delves into some really inspiring examples of people who achieved incredible things by thinking outside the box. It's all about lateral thinking and what Epstein calls deliberate amateurs.
I love that phrase. It reframes the whole idea of being an amateur. It's not about lacking expertise, but about bringing a fresh perspective to the table.
Exactly. One prime example is Gunpei Yokoi, the creator of the Nintendo Game Boy. He used what Epstein calls lateral thinking with withered technology, deliberately choosing older, less sophisticated technology to create a wildly successful product.
Okay, so explain what withered technology means. At first, I pictured some ancient, dusty contraption.
It's actually quite brilliant. Yokoi recognized that user experience and engaging gameplay were more important than fancy graphics or processing power. By using older, more familiar technology, he made the Game Boy affordable and accessible, leading to its phenomenal success.
It's like he took something familiar and repurposed it in a totally new way. It's a classic example of how innovation can come from unexpected places.
And it connects to the value of integrating old and new knowledge, especially in our current information-saturated world. It's not about discarding the past, but finding creative ways to combine it with the present, which is a key advantage of having a wide range.
That makes so much sense. And this idea extends beyond technology, right? Epstein includes some inspiring examples from other fields as well.
You're thinking of Jill Viles, right? She identified a potential treatment for her rare muscular dystrophy by making a connection with the bodybuilder with a different but potentially related condition. She was a deliberate amateur, someone who dives into a field out of passion and brings a fresh perspective.
It's like she cracked a code by observing patterns and drawing connections that no one else had seen. And she'd do it without any formal medical training.
It highlights how valuable a fresh perspective can be, even without formal expertise. Sometimes approaching a problem from a different angle can lead to breakthroughs that specialists might miss.
And Epstein also discusses Don Swanson, who developed a computer system called Aerosmith to connect disparate areas of scientific literature, uncovering hidden interdisciplinary insights. He's essentially using technology to help researchers make those unexpected connections, like Jill did with her own condition.
Precisely. It's all about finding ways to bridge the gaps between specialized fields, recognizing that the solution to one problem might lie in a seemingly unrelated area of research. And this is where having a broad range of knowledge becomes such an asset.
It's like we've been wearing blinders, focusing too narrowly on our own little area of expertise. This is all making me rethink my approach to learning and problem solving.
That's the beauty of exploring these ideas. It challenges us to think differently and to recognize the potential benefits of broadening our horizons.
So what happens when we fail to challenge those assumptions?
Well, Epstein illustrates this through the story of Carter Racing, a Harvard Business School case study. It's about a racing team deciding whether to compete despite a series of engine failures. They have data on temperature and gasket breaks, but are so focused on the potential reward and the pressure to perform that they miss a crucial piece of information.
Remind me about that crucial piece of information. It's been a while since business school.
The O-rings fail in cold temperatures, they end up racing, and the engine fails catastrophically. It's a powerful lesson about confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out information that confirms our existing belief while ignoring evidence that contradicts them.
And he connects this to the Challenger disaster, right? Highlighting how even NASA, with its focus on quantitative rigor, can fall prey to this bias.
Exactly. The engineers did raise concerns about the O-rings, but couldn't quantify the risk to NASA's satisfaction. They were trapped in a wicked problem, uncertain data, time pressure, and a culture prioritizing quantitative evidence, which ultimately led to a tragic outcome.
That's a sobering thought. If NASA can get it wrong, what hope is there for the rest of us?
It's a stark reminder that even the most sophisticated systems and brilliant minds can be vulnerable to human error, especially when clinging to established procedures and failing to question assumptions. It reinforces the need for what psychologist Carl White calls dropping your familiar tools.
But sometimes you have to abandon what you think you know. even the most trusted methods to adapt to unfamiliar challenges.
Precisely. It's about recognizing when your go-to tools are no longer appropriate and being willing to improvise, even if it feels counterintuitive. This kind of flexibility is essential for navigating the complexities of modern life, especially when faced with wicked problems.
That takes courage, especially in a high-pressure environment where everyone's expecting you to have the answers. How do we cultivate that kind of mental agility? Are some people just naturally better at it?
That's a great question. And that's where we'll pick up in part 2 of your deep dive into the power of range. We'll explore the characteristics of those who are adept at adapting and making accurate predictions in uncertain environments.
I can't wait to dive back in. This is already giving me a lot to think about.
It's a fascinating journey, and we've only just begun.
See you soon. Welcome back to your deep dive into range, why generalists triumphed in a specialized world. Before we jumped into the idea of challenging assumptions, we were talking about flexibility and how sometimes we need to abandon our familiar tools to solve a problem.
It's a fascinating concept. Epstein illustrates this point with the Challenger disaster, where NASA engineers, despite their expertise and procedures, failed to adequately consider the risks posed by the O-ring failure in cold temperatures.
It's a tragic example of how clinging to procedures, even in a high-stakes environment like NASA, can have devastating consequences.
What's interesting is that the engineers did voice concerns about the O-rings, but they couldn't quantify the risk to NASA's satisfaction. They were stuck in a classic wicked problem with uncertain data, intense pressure, and a culture that prioritized quantitative evidence above all else.
So even in a field renowned for its data-driven approach, sometimes the available data just isn't enough. And relying solely on those familiar tools can lead to disaster.
Exactly. Epstein emphasizes the importance of recognizing when your go-to methods might not be suitable and being willing to adapt. He highlights psychologist Carl Weich's concept of dropping your familiar tools, which encourages us to step outside our comfort zones and consider alternative approaches, even if they seem counterintuitive.
It makes you wonder how we can cultivate that kind of mental agility, especially when facing those wicked problems.
Well, Epstein draws on the work of Philip Tetlock, who conducted a long-term study on forecasting accuracy. He found that the most accurate forecasters weren't necessarily the experts with deep knowledge in a specific area, but rather those who were what he called foxes.
Foxes? What makes them such good forecasters?
Tetlock found that foxes tend to have broad interests, diverse knowledge, and importantly, a willingness to update their beliefs based on new information. They're comfortable with uncertainty and able to synthesize information from various sources, even if those sources offer conflicting perspectives.
So it's less about being a specialist in one particular field, and more about being able to adapt your thinking based on new evidence and connect the dots between different areas of knowledge.
Precisely. These foxes were able to see the bigger picture, connect seemingly unrelated dots, and challenge their own assumptions, making them more effective at navigating complex situations. And this ability to constantly update one's beliefs is what Epstein refers to as active open-mindedness.
Active open-mindedness. Could you elaborate on what that means?
It's about approaching your own ideas as hypotheses to be tested, not as absolute truths. It's about actively seeking out information that might disprove your beliefs, rather than just seeking confirmation for what you already think.
It seems like that would be an incredibly valuable skill in today's world, where we're constantly bombarded with information. Some of it reliable and some of it not.
Absolutely. And Epstein suggests we can practice active open-mindedness through a problem-solving approach called Fermi thinking, named after physicist Enrico Fermi.
Fermi thinking. I'm intrigued. What is that exactly?
It's about breaking down a seemingly impossible problem into smaller, more manageable questions and using your existing knowledge, however limited it may be, to make educated guesses.
I'm still not quite sure how that connects to active open-mindedness.
We'll take the classic Fermi problem. How many piano tuners are there in Chicago? You probably don't know offhand, but you can start making reasonable estimates by considering things like Chicago's population, the percentage of households with pianos, how often pianos need tuning, and how many pianos a tuner can service in a day.
So it's about embracing uncertainty and being comfortable with making educated guesses based on limited information. It sounds like a fun brain teaser.
It is, but more importantly, it's a way to combat what Epstein calls the Einstellung effect, which is the tendency to get stuck in familiar patterns of thinking even when they're no longer effective. By breaking down problems into smaller parts and considering different approaches, we can challenge our mental defaults and become more adaptable thinkers.
So it's about challenging those go-to solutions that we rely on without really thinking, which can be a roadblock when facing novel challenges.
Precisely. And this applies to any field. From making business decisions to conducting scientific research, it's about cultivating a mindset that's open to new information and alternative approaches.
Okay, so we've talked about the power of range, the importance of challenging assumptions, and the benefits of active open-mindedness. But I'm wondering what all of this means for someone already on a specialized career path. Is it too late to cultivate range?
It's never too late. Epstein offers some great advice in his book for those who want to become more well-rounded thinkers, regardless of where they are in their careers. He encourages readers to approach work and projects with an open mind, be willing to learn new things, and adjust course as needed.
It sounds like embracing a growth mindset. The idea that we're always evolving and learning is crucial.
Exactly. And that means seeing changes in direction as valuable learning opportunities, not failures. We're so conditioned to view changing course as a sign of weakness, a detour from the right path.
It's a huge mental shift.
It is. But those detours, as Epstein argues, can often lead us to more fulfilling and unexpected destinations.
Okay, so being flexible and adaptable is key. What other insights does Epstein offer?
He emphasizes the importance of being able to articulate the value of your diverse experiences. It's not just about listing them on a resume, but about connecting the dots and explaining how those experiences have shaped your thinking, problem-solving abilities, and adaptability.
So it's not just about having a bunch of random experiences, but about being able to explain how they've contributed to your overall skill set.
Exactly. It's about creating a narrative that highlights your unique blend of skills and experiences, showcasing how your range makes you a valuable asset.
It's like weaving a tapestry, showcasing the richness and interconnectedness of your experiences, rather than just climbing a ladder in one specific field.
It's a beautiful analogy, and Epstein delves into specific strategies for cultivating range. He suggests seeking out opportunities to learn outside your immediate field of expertise. Take a class, attend a workshop, read books, even just have conversations with people from different backgrounds.
So actively exposing yourself to new ideas and perspectives,
Yeah.
even if they seem unrelated to your current work or interests, is key.
Precisely. He also suggests taking on projects that challenge you to stretch your skills and step outside your comfort zone, which can accelerate your growth and adaptability.
I can see how that would force you to think differently and develop new approaches to problem solving. Does he have any other suggestions?
He recommends cultivating hobbies and interests outside of work, not just as stress relievers, but as potential sources of inspiration and creative cross-pollination.
So nurturing our curiosity and exploring different passions, even if they seem unproductive on the surface, can contribute to our overall growth and well-roundedness.
Exactly. It's all part of becoming a lifelong learner and embracing a journey of discovery and personal growth.
It's refreshing to hear this message. In a world obsessed with specialization, it's easy to feel like we have to have everything figured out, like our path has to be linear and predictable.
But Epstein's research challenges that notion. It suggests that those unexpected detours, the cross-pollination of ideas, and the willingness to embrace uncertainty are often where true innovation and fulfillment lie.
This reminds me of Frances Hesselbein, the former CEO of the Girl Scouts. She didn't have a grand plan for her career, but embraced new opportunities and challenges, even when they weren't part of her original vision.
And look at what she accomplished. She transformed the Girl Scouts into a more modern, inclusive organization, drawing on her diverse experiences and her willingness to learn and adapt.
She's a fantastic example of someone who embodied the power of range. She wasn't afraid to pivot, take on new roles, and challenge the status quo.
And as Epstein points out, this kind of adaptability is becoming increasingly valuable in the modern workplace.
It makes sense. The world is changing at such a rapid pace. The jobs of the future will likely require a very different set of skills than the jobs of the past.
Exactly. He even cites research indicating that one of the strongest predictors of who becomes an executive is the number of different job functions an individual has worked across.
So it's not about climbing a ladder in one specific field,
Yeah.
but about developing a diverse skill set and being able to adapt to different roles and challenges.
It's about becoming what Epstein calls a portfolio person, someone who brings a unique combination of experiences and perspectives to the table.
I love this idea. It gives us permission to explore, experiment, be curious, and embrace the unexpected turns in our journey. It suggests that our unique blend of experiences can be a source of strength, not a weakness.
And it reminds us that there's not one right path, but rather a path that's uniquely our own, built upon our diverse experiences and ever-evolving range of skills and interests.
I'm so glad we're taking this deep dive into range. It's given me a lot to think about. both in terms of my career and how I approach learning and life in general.
It's a thought-provoking journey for sure. And in part 3 of your deep dive, we'll explore how this idea of range applies not just to individuals, but also to teams and organizations. We'll delve into what it means to be a T-shaped person and why that kind of well-roundedness might be the key to success in a world that's increasingly complex and unpredictable.
I'm eager to continue this exploration. See you soon. Welcome back to the final part of your deep dive into range, why generalists triumph in a specialized world. We've been talking about all the benefits of having a broad range of experiences and knowledge, especially in a world that kind of pushes us towards specialization.
Yeah, it's almost like we're programmed to think that we have to pick one specific lane and just stay in it for our entire careers. But as we've been discussing, that kind of narrow focus might actually be holding us back.
Exactly. So before we were starting to explore how this idea of range applies not just to individuals, but to teams and organizations too. You mentioned the concept of a T-shaped person. Can you explain what that means?
Okay, so think of the letter T. The vertical stroke represents deep expertise in a particular area. That's specialized knowledge base that's essential for any profession. But the horizontal stroke is just as important. It represents the ability to connect that expertise to other fields, to draw on diverse experiences, and to approach problems from multiple perspectives.
So it's like having a deep well of knowledge in your specific field, but also having this wide network of mental connections to other areas. It's about being able to see the bigger picture and integrate different perspectives.
Precisely. And Epstein points out that these T-shaped people are often the ones who drive innovation and make breakthroughs. They can see patterns that others might miss because they're not limited by a narrow field of vision.
They can synthesize information from different sources, challenge conventional thinking, and come up with those out-of-the-box solutions that lead to real progress.
Exactly. And they're not afraid to learn new things, even if it means stepping outside their comfort zone. They embody the idea of being a lifelong learner, constantly expanding their range of skills and knowledge.
So it's not that specialists are bad or unnecessary. It's more that generalists often have a unique advantage, especially in today's complex and rapidly changing world.
Right. Think about the research Epstein highlights on innovation in science and business. He found that diverse teams, those with a mix of specialists and generalists, were often the most successful.
Because those diverse teams could bring a wider range of perspectives to the table, challenge each other's assumptions, and ultimately come up with more innovative and robust solutions.
Precisely. Having that blend of deep expertise and broad perspectives can lead to a more dynamic and creative problem-solving process.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. I'm already starting to rethink my own career path and how I can embrace the power of range.
And it's a good reminder that we don't have to fit ourselves into those neat little boxes that society often presents us with.
It's okay to explore different interests, to try new things, to be curious about the world, and to allow ourselves to evolve over time.
Exactly. And to remember that our unique blend of experiences can be a source of strength, not a weakness. It's what makes us adaptable and resilient in the face of change.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listeners? If we could distill everything we've discussed into one key piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I would say embrace the power of range. Don't be afraid to explore, to experiment, to learn new things, and to connect seemingly unrelated ideas. It's in those intersections, those unexpected connections, that true innovation and fulfillment often lie.
I love that. Embrace the power of range. And remember, it's never too late to start expanding your horizons. Even small steps like reading a book outside your field or having a conversation with someone with a different background can make a big difference.
It's about cultivating that curiosity and open-mindedness that allows us to grow and adapt.
This has been a fascinating journey through the world of range. Hopefully, it's given you, our listener, a new way to think about your own path.
And remember, the world needs your unique blend of skills and experiences.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep expanding your range. Who knows what incredible connections you'll make.
This has been your deep dive into the power of range. Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, keep diving.